Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Hi, and welcome back to Journey Forward with Jory Rose. I'm really looking forward to my conversation today with Tamara Arnold. Tamara, hello and welcome.
Hello, it is so great to be here with you and your listeners. I'm so excited.
Yay! So Tamara, I like to keep our introductions really informal. I don't want to read your bio. I don't want to give all these credentials, but I want to hear from you who you are. And so please tell our listeners who you are and tell what it is that you're going to talk about today.
Well, I always like to start with I'm a human. And
welcome to being human.
Right? Like I am a person, just like everybody who is listening is a person. And I just have stumbled into the world of energy mastery. That is the realm in which I live. And so a few years ago, I became an author, and that was a separate journey.
Congratulations. I'm just going to pause you on that. That is such a huge accomplishment. Absolute congratulations on becoming an author.
Thank you. It's like getting tattoos. And
do you have tattoos?
I have one. I have one tattoo.
I've got one tattoo also. But, you know, becoming an author, that is quite a journey and a commitment and an absolute accomplishment.
I really appreciate you saying that, Jory, because like it takes a I'm talking about energy mastery here. Writing a book, especially if you're writing nonfiction, asks you to relive the experiences that you're writing about. So
yes,
it really does pull up anything that you maybe have been stuffing down in your energy or not looking at or kind of tucking in the corner or under a rug energetically. And so it's a really powerful process, literally, to do a book because you are doing your own internal work at the same time.
Yeah. So we can talk about your books, but tell me a little bit more about what energy mastery really means and how did you get to know that you are a master of energy?
So energy mastery is that everything in the world is energy, and we have the capacity to lean into being empowered with it. So using it for the betterness of our business, for our relationships, for our lives, or we can be a victim to the energy as well, meaning that we believe things are happening to us and against us. And, you know, we can lay in our own, which I did. I laid in my own woes and sorrows for many years, having grown up around mental illness. But, you know, there's a place in which when you can learn what's actually happening within your internal body, then you become in control or in power of what you actually see as your reality. And it was in 2017 after a depression when my then 17-year-old son and I had to stop talking for 6 months due to a toxic relationship. That is when I started I had a depression chair. That's what I called it, because I would curl up in the fetal position. And at the time I was a personal trainer, and I would get up out of the chair and I would go and I would train a client, and I'd come back and I'd lie back down in this little ball. And that's not my normal being. I'm a happy person. According to Strength Finders, my number one strength is positivity, right? Okay. So this goes against my grain to be in that state. And so
yet there you were.
There I was, right? Because what's happening around us oftentimes can become so powerfully like sad, grief, all these emotions. They are such a gift when we actually lean into experiencing them instead of pushing them away. And so it allowed me in that moment and in that grief to start to ask one question that has become probably the question that I would recommend everybody to ask. And I know you had said, can you give somebody something like an attainable, something that they can walk away?
Something tangible to take away.
Right. And so when I was actually lying in that space, you know, I would just simply say, what is one thing I can do today to feel better than I did yesterday? Just one small thing. And if I did that one thing, I was like, I had a successful day.
It's so simple.
Right.
And it's something, you know, I talk about creating change a lot with my clients and on the podcast, and people really have an assumption that change has to be big to be significant. And it's one of the biggest fallacies about change. And I often say, even a 1% shift puts you on a different trajectory. And 1% feels really small if we're trying to make a big change in our life. And yet we could do 1%.
I think we get confused, and maybe your clients do too, but mine do, where, this is where I am currently and this is where I want to be. Like my ideal, like this is the dream, but there's a huge gap, and that can feel really like broad and expansive. And so it often keeps us in that state of paralyzation because we're like, how am I going to get there? Right. So that whole process of 1%, my statement is one small step every day covers a lot of distance over time.
Yeah. So what would be some examples of one small thing you would do each day to help get you out of that depression chair?
So there would be go for a walk. It would be, take a shower because it was hard for me at the time to do that.
Yeah, sometimes that's a lot of effort.
Make a therapy appointment, get my hair done, just small things, read a book, call a friend, because when you're in that state, you internalize, right? Because I say this with great love, but my depression was selfish, right? Like I expected people to come to me. I didn't want anything to be like, it was all about me. Right. So those kinds of experiences of saying like, reach out to a friend, that felt challenging. That was really difficult.
Sure.
That's why it was a success. But one day I heard meditate.
Okay.
Like, what? Because I'd never meditated.
I want to say one thing really quick before we move on to the meditation piece. I love how you called it a depression chair, because what I find so often with clients is people who are experiencing depression label it as this is who I am versus this is where I'm at.
Yes.
And I just want to highlight that because I think that's so valuable. And I'm a very visual person, so I see things very visually. So like I can visualize that depression chair. I am not the chair. It's just what's there. And sometimes I'm in it and sometimes I'm not. And it's a part of my life in that moment. But I think I love the way you named it, because I think language is incredibly powerful.
Yes.
And the way that we name things, label things, speak to ourselves in our own mind impacts our experience of whatever we're going through. So to have a really accurate label of this is just where I'm sitting right now.
I never thought of it like this, Jory, so I appreciate you saying it.
You are very welcome. Yeah, you're very welcome, because I think it's powerful. And in fact, I often say to my clients, back in the 80s, they actually changed how they did work with anorexics. Instead of having them say, I have anorexia, instead of I'm anorexic. It's so subtle. Yep. It's such a subtle shift, but the power of that language takes it from being something that they had as an identity to something that they were experiencing.
It's true.
So for what it's worth, I just wanted to name that because I think that's beautiful in just your description of your depression and of your experience at the time. So anyhow, you were sitting in your depression chair one day, and also the words meditation came to you.
On a side note, I have to follow this story because one day it was an electric chair with like a remote control, and it was like, you know what I mean? Like it was like a thing. And one day it just wouldn't go down. Like the footrest wouldn't go down. And what a powerful moment it was to put that on the side of the curb.
Yeah.
Right. Like I cried because it was like releasing a part of me I've been holding on to. So, there is a level of attachment that we give something as well. And so,
well, that label becomes an identity, and we stay familiar in an identity even when it doesn't serve us.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I heard meditation, I didn't know what to do, obviously, because I'd never meditated before. And like I want to call out to any listeners, I was in my late 30s. Like I was like, 37, 38 when this happened. So I looked at like, it's amazing the way that energy works. And so, that day, of course, I'm on Facebook because who doesn't love their social media? And a 30-day meditate with the angels came up, right? Like free.
Thank you, universe.
Right. And I was like, okay, that must be what they want me to do, because that was what I heard to meditate. This appeared, and I pressed that, and I slept through all 30 days. Just like every day.
See, this is what I love about people's entree into meditation. It's so often just that way that we get this calling and then we're like, I don't understand. What the hell am I supposed to be doing here? Like, what is this all about?
Yeah, but the way that I felt was happening was that the work that was happening was bigger than my conscious mind could actually process. And so my subconscious was doing the work. I was starting to feel better.
Yeah.
And so after the 30 days of sleeping through, I was like, my family was involved. Like everybody was like, did you med a nap today? Like,
Can I just ask, what did it look like? What did that 30-day practice actually, what was it, a recording you listened to? What was that?
Yeah, it was just a recording that came to the inbox every single day. I would lay down, which I later didn't lay down, so that helped me a little bit.
People often will say, I always fall asleep, and I'll often say, well, what position are you in? Well, I'm lying down. Yeah, that's when your body's conditioned for bed.
Yeah.
Try it sitting up.
So yeah, I would just put the headphones in because it was usually in the living room with my family. I was like, I was living in a world that was very closed into one room, one chair, one everything. And it would, like clockwork, it was amazing. It would be like, and we're just going to get into the meditation out. And the minute they were saying like, and come back into your body, it was like, boom, I was back. And I was like, that alone was really fascinating, right? Because the awareness of how we respond to external stimuli like that, I was just like,
absolutely
fascinating.
Well, and also such a clear indication of how just exhausted your body was.
Yeah.
Whenever people fall asleep in meditation that I lead, I always remind them, like, this was a message of you reminding yourself, I'm exhausted, and I probably don't slow down enough in my day to just sit and breathe. So no wonder you fell asleep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what happened after that 30 days?
Well, I continued meditating, and then I started to actually have visitors in my meditation. So like grandparents or
people who had passed.
People who had passed.
Okay.
I would start to see like visions of angels in my meditations. Just like different messages were coming through different platforms, if you will, or different realms.
So would you have ever categorized yourself as someone who is spiritual or open to that otherworldly phenomena, or woo-woo, as some would say?
At the time, no. So when I was getting the messaging in meditation, and then I started to hear the angel speak to me in my higher self, and what I learned was my higher self, and was starting to receive like voice like guidance outside of meditation, I did make a therapy appointment. I was like, because again, I come from mental illness in my family, or mental health problems, since that's more correct to say, but
right.
I was like, maybe I need to get myself checked out here. Because
are these voices good voices?
Well, we live in a society. This is what Western culture state, right? So, I mean, if you go into any hospital and do you see things, do you hear things, we are considered crazy. And I say that word with love, but that's what people are dictating. And
that's the rhetoric we're hearing and being told. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my first reaction. And I had been seeing this therapist since I was in my early 20s, like 23, 24. And I've been seeing her for 15 years. And so when I sat down, I was like, I hear voices. She was like, I'm so blessed that she said this. She said, I think it's time. I'm like, time, what? Time for what? She's like, now's the time for you to learn A Course in Miracles.
Okay.
And I didn't know what that was. I had never heard of it before. I'd been living under the veil in the darkness for so long, seeing the same woman. But at that moment, she was like, okay, now I can be your mentor. Now I can actually guide you.
You were ready. You were open.
Yeah.
She could have said that to you at any other point in your work together, and you wouldn't have been able to hear it or receive it or engage in it in the same way.
I was a little defensive, Jory, for most of my life. So she wasn't going to get that level of information out of me. And so that led to learning A Course in Miracles, again, leaning into the guidance that I was hearing. They would guide me to make intention card decks or coloring agendas. And then when they guided me, they're like, contact Hay House. And one day, and I was like, what you talking about? And they're like, contact Hay House. And I was like, if you actually get spiritual guidance, they can be very persistent. Very persistent. They will continuously say it till you do the action in which they're asking. And so I tried going for a walk. I tried doing all these things. I was like trying to, divert them from saying that. But I went in and I looked it up. It was a fortress, but it brought me to who would be the mentor that basically changed the directory of my life, which was Angela Laurie at the Author Incubator, because it brought me to the space of writing my first book. And that book is literally called My Kid is Driving Me Crazy, A Mom's Survival Guide for Living with a Child with Mental Illness.
Wow.
And it was in that book. I didn't want to write that book. That was a very uncomfortable book to write. It called up all the sensations and emotions, and to go back into a place. And I mean, we've all said it. I'm like, I'm past that. I don't want to have to go back and go through that again. but there's a level in which you're doing it to support others, right? Like, so writing a book that was actually helping other people through what we had gone through was healing. It was uncomfortable, but it was healing.
Sure. Well, and you were able to relive it from a different vantage point.
Yes. Yeah. And I had so much guidance at that time, which was supporting me. And that was when I say now that I busted open my root chakra and my throat chakra, because the familial stuff was in the root, and the seeking approval and the fear of judgment. And, really I was losing a lot of energy out that place of what I call the energy funnel, which is in your body. And throat chakra, I was afraid to hurt the ones I loved. So writing that book freed me to be in an aligned state to receive what was actually my purpose. And it was during the writing of that book that I downloaded I Could Read Chakras. And again, it all happened in my bathroom, because it would tell me if you're the shower person or the driving person, when you're like at your relaxed state, when the messaging comes in. And they were like, you can read chakras. And for anyone listening, it's like, I didn't believe it. I was like, you've got the wrong human. I know nothing about chakras. Why are you doing this to me?
Yeah.
And it was like, you can't.
I love that you were so open to listening after you kept hearing the same message. Because I believe we are a lot more connected to spirit, to, whatever you want to call it. I call it the universe, whether it's the angels, whatever the messaging is. And I think people hear these messages and shut them down. And I've seen in myself, once I became open to receiving and I got clear, the universe wouldn't shut up. It's amazing.
It's amazing. I call it a partnership. I do, because if we stand in one spot and expect them just to like guide us and, can I say things that are inappropriate on this?
Please, absolutely, go for it.
Okay, so where we become sign whores, and we stand in one spot and say, but I need a sign, and then a sign comes and you're like, okay, that sign wasn't good enough or big enough or clear enough. Can I get another sign? And then another sign comes, and eventually the signs are going to stop showing up and the messaging is going to stop showing, and you're just going to be standing there alone again, because it really is like momentum and movement. Everything I was receiving up until that point, I was taking action on, because even though it was uncomfortable, it was making me feel better.
Yeah.
Right. And it was all positive. And it stretched me. And it made me do things I'd never thought I was doing, or,
And it also really seemed to get you out of the self-concept you had been identified in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how often do we just stay stuck there thinking this is just who I am?
And I believe with every ounce of my being, and for anyone who is listening, I knew I was meant to do something, right? Like, I knew that there was something on this earth. I was placed. Why did I come down here? Why was I in this body? What was my purpose? And so that tiny little spark of knowing created the space for me to actually begin to listen. If I'd never had that belief in the first place, then it is more challenging to step into momentum or movement or anything. But I did. I've always known since I was little, even when things were, going on that were chaos, I was like, I'm going to do something great one day.
And you are. So tell me more about the chakras, because as much as I know about a lot of mindfulness and meditation tools, this is one area that I would consider in the spiritual realm that I believe in, but I don't know much about. So can you walk us through the different chakras, what it means, and then when you're done with that, I've got a really great story for you having to do with chakras.
So I could go into each one in depth. So my true belief, though, is that we download whatever is our gift, what we're here to do, in the version and the way that we are to support and teach. So there is no similarities between how I would talk about chakras and somebody else. So
great. Make it yours. I love that. I'm the same way with mindfulness and meditation. Same thing.
Yeah. So when I downloaded it and I started going into energy right away, I was just like, I need to get into as many human bodies' energy as I could. What I started to realize is that their energy was just using my body to speak back to them.
Okay.
So it was a very powerful way to kind of go in, and I would go into each chakra and there would be what I found, a resistance, a physical thing that would happen in real life that would let you know that that particular chakra was out of alignment. And that's what I'm kind of being guided to share with you guys with today.
Okay.
And you know, and that way you have a little bit of awareness. So our root chakra, if you think about like receiving from the universe and you think of a funnel, right? Like it's easy to think of a funnel, right? I always think that the crown is super fun because it's like, oh, it's wide open and you want to receive as many things. But when we get to the root, energetically, we could be receiving information all the way down, but it gets to the root. And at some point, one of these chakras will leak. They're like 7 floors of your energetic body. So if you see the root chakra is really our foundation of who we are, grounded into who we are, who we serve. It's connected to feeling like we're fitting in and that we have our collective or our tribe or our community. It's that sense of belonging. And so oftentimes I think of this as like the foundation, the legs, the table legs of the rest of your energy system. And I talk about this one a lot because most people ignore this one. So we pack down all our shit into the root.
Okay.
So, you know, if you have any of these 4 things going on, if you're thinking about the funnel and losing it energy, like seeping out, like there's a hole in the bucket, if you're giving any attention to fear of judgment, seeking approval, having clear boundaries, or people pleasing, think about that from the level of collective community and tribe. That's a convincing energy, right? And so what happens when we're out of alignment in the root is that we get caught in distraction, right? All of that stuff distracts us from our true purpose. It distracts us from who we are and who we're here to serve and what we're meant to do, right? And so if we go up into the second one, which is sacral, and this is my faves in a way because it is our confidence, it's how we show up, it's how we're seen, it is sexual energy, sensual energy, and feminine energy. It really is the ability to release control. That's really what this one is.
I can't wait to tell you my story. You're going to love it. Okay, keep going. I'm getting so excited. Okay. So the second one is the sacral chakra. That's what it was? Okay.
The first one was tailbone. This is pubis bone, right? But this is like confidence. This really is, I say a sacral speaks before you even open your mouth, right? Your energy from your sacral is like the greatest gift you have to utilize in being seen. And that's why the resistance of this one is hiding. But you can hide in plain sight. You can hide by, you know, being someone who goes to the events, but you don't actually do anything. Oftentimes, if you're in the shadow of the sacral, you could be anywhere. You could be at the parties and the dinners, and, you know, you'll talk to people afterwards and say, oh yeah, but I was there. And people are going like, really? I didn't know you were there. I didn't even see you. Like, that's kind of like an indicator.
Yeah.
The third one up is your solar plexus belly button. This one's your junk drawer. This is the one where beliefs are held. Your current beliefs that you've been carrying since you were wee, it really does hold your ability to feel deserving and worthy, right? Because you're thinking everything else everybody's ever said to you or about you. And it will affect how you show up and whether you believe you're deserving or worthy of success, of money, of, you know, love, all these things. And so the actual resistance in your solar plexus is perfectionism and imposter syndrome.
Okay.
Because you often feel like you don't have enough. I don't have enough time, money, resources, research, certifications, education, like all those, because you're not enough, so therefore you don't have enough. When you get into your heart chakra, this is your breath. As a personal trainer for 9 years, right? The heart is the organ that keeps you physically alive. Like, it pumps you. Like, a heart that stops beating, you stop living. It's like right. But it's actually your breath of your energy system. And if you were to think about how you breathe right now, if you're holding your breath, you're in energetic pause. You're not receiving, you're not giving. If you inhale, you're stuck, right? Your energy system is stuck. But the thing about the heart, when you know that it is full of energy that you are holding on to, people feel responsible for, if you're an empath, and like, you know, anytime you're holding responsibility for somebody, you're basically filling space in your heart with their energy, and it will present in real life as martyrdom. All I do is give everything for everybody. I'm always doing everything for everybody else, and nobody gives anything for me. That's because you're giving, but you're not receiving.
Women especially get so stuck in that space.
Oh, so stuck. So stuck. But that's what we are programmed to do.
And we feel like we're being the best mothers or partners by doing it. And we forget that it's actually not serving us.
Or them.
Right.
Like, or them. Like, one of the things I say is I remove people from my heart. So I'm not exhausting myself as being the translator.
Carrier. Yeah.
Right? Because it's going to come through me to get to them. But I also give them the opportunity to find their own connection to source.
Right, right.
Lovingly taking them out of my heart. So throat chakra is pretty basic.
Lovingly take them out of your heart. I want to just repeat that for a minute, because that feels, on the one hand, contradictory to what we want to do when we hold people.
Right?
So that's really powerful what you said, because I think we don't know how to do that.
We're not taught it.
It feels like neglect or abandonment when really it's care.
Yep.
Right?
Oh yeah, it's care for you, it's care for them. It is,
to
me, it is the highest level of love that we offer to someone, is to give them the freedom to step fully into themselves, their energy, their connection, and trust that.
Right.
We'll get to trust in a second.
Okay. Sorry, I just had to pause on that, because that was like a really great moment of wisdom.
Thank you. Throat chakra, if you don't know anything about energy, technically your throat chakra is the only way energy has to physically leave the body, right? Like, think about that, right? So if you're holding in how you really feel, you'll clench your teeth, right? Like if you are, somebody who has dental problems or jaw
tightness, tension
in the jaw, you are legitimately not saying things you're not. And so,
and I remember I recently had a friend who, she kept losing her voice. And I said to her about the throat chakra, like, what are you unable to, energetically speak or communicate? And she hadn't ever connected the energy source from what was physically manifesting.
This is such a segue, because the resistance is sickness.
Yeah.
So losing voice, getting, a sore throat. And again, energy, when it's not leaving the body, it finds a place to be stored.
It's going to get stuck somewhere.
It's going to get stuck somewhere. It often will get stuck in the place of highest need of attention. So you'll have, problems going on in your digestion if it's solar plexus. You'll get chronic headaches if it's third eye. It will present to you. Your body is talking to you.
Yeah.
When you start to get sick and you're like, why am I getting sick? I don't understand. I never get sick. That's a throat chakra thing. And unresolved, it will manifest into bigger sickness.
I believe it.
Third eye at your forehead. We are so taught to be in our mind.
Oh, yes.
In our mind, because the opposite of that is trust. And so if you have a wide open third eye, then you're trusting. That is, you trust yourself, you trust others, you trust a connection far greater than you. So you don't have to go into the rabbit hole and create, all the stories and, be thinking about things before they happen and worrying and all that, because that takes a lot of energy, y'all. Like,
yes, it does. And that's where we just spin and ruminate.
I call it the dryer cycle, right? Where your thought just goes around and around. And so the resistance in your third eye is you literally shut down. It's those moments where you cannot keep your eyes open for one more second. Like, you could be in a room with a crowd of people and you just have to close your eyes and sleep.
Yeah.
And it's because you physically, energetically can't. It's like resetting. It presses reset on your body and your energy to take that moment, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, to slow that process down. So that's the And then we get to the crown. The crown is, where things enter at the body, right? This is your willingness to allow, your willingness to receive, your, putting all the pieces together, trusting that things are going to happen. And you will actually resist receiving by believing that something bad's going to happen. And
say that again. So you resist receiving what the universe or whatever is supposed to be received by believing something bad will happen.
Absolutely. And I'll give you an example.
Okay.
My one was like, every time something good happens in my business, something happens with my mom or my son.
Something negative,
right? So like, they're the reason why. Or, every time I go to an event, my car breaks down. Or every time I think about investing in myself, something goes wrong in the house.
Yeah.
Right. So the resistance is that you're feeling really unsafe in allowing things in. Like, there's a fear that, something bad is going to happen to you.
It's like what Brene Brown talks about as foreboding joy. That idea of, as soon as something good happens, we're waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah.
Like I'm not deserving of all this positivity my way. So subconsciously we're manifesting some negative to occur to balance out what we think is supposed to be balanced of positive and negative energy in our lives.
Yep. Yep. And so there's a level of getting to where when your crown is wide open, you feel super safe with everything that's coming in. You're in that clear channel. I always say when you can receive all the way down to your root, where like you're so grounded into who you are and who you serve, what your purpose is, that like a mirror, it's reflected back up into the sky, right? And that's like our bat signal. That's how we find love. That's how we find relationships. That's how we find, you know, our clients, our everything is in this beautiful state of reflection. And so when you can see everything coming in as being either a gift or a lesson, right? Like everything is beautiful when you think that you're just unpacking it.
I love it. There's so much wisdom in what the body carries. And I think as important as it is to know what each energy center holds, I think most importantly, at least I would imagine for my clients who are coming to me for therapy, is to understand where the resistances are and what is manifesting physically in the body as a result of those resistances.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's how I see it, as like the shadow of each chakra a little bit, but right. So we have it when it's in its essence, and then we have like what is actually happening in the shadow. And to me, the shadow gives us more answers.
Right.
Resistance.
And so I understand there's also like, what do the colors have to do with each chakra? And what about different elements? How does that play into it all?
So for me, like I was saying, in terms of how I receive it as an empath, I'm a feeler. So everything I feel the chakras. To me, they don't present as colors. They don't have the symbols attached to them. When I'm in somebody's energy and their body or their energy is using my body, I'm reflecting things that is being like, I always consider it like the Marie Kondo of your inner body, right? I'm here to help you unpack what's being stored in it. So the color doesn't show up for me.
Okay.
I think it's a really beautiful way for people who are visual to align what's going on. Like each of those colors does represent something. Actually, sure. I'll show you this, because to me it's powerful when you think of it from the actual hertz energy scale, right? Your lowest vibration energetically is the densest energy is shame and guilt, right? And if I look at that from the level of the root chakra, we carry a lot of shame and guilt where our family is concerned, where, you know, we feel like we fit in. So I find that really helps me put the colors into perspective.
Yeah, no, I like that.
So that's what it means to me.
Okay.
And then when you say elements, what does that mean?
Like water. Like I've always been told that like water was an element of the second chakra.
Again, not my teachings in any way.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I love the elements. I actually have done a lot of circles and gatherings. And you know, I've actually traveled to Scotland on pilgrimages.
Wow.
The rumming circles, and where we call to the elements. And I think they're powerful in themselves. I think they hold their own turf and ground.
So my story I was going to tell you was back in, I'm going to get my timeline wrong on the year, but I want to say 2011. My house flooded. And I came downstairs one day and there was water coming up through the tile. And at the time I was married, and it was a difficult point in that relationship. And long story short, it was the dishwasher that had flooded, which is a much bigger story. And you can tune in. For those who are listening, I think I talk about this in one of my early episodes of the podcast, which, you know, every sign of the universe was coming in to point me in different directions. But the kitchen flooded, and we got the house repaired, and someone had said to me, something is off with your second chakra. And she was explaining to me exactly what the second chakra meant. And I was in resistance of there was no flow. Let's put it that way. There was a lack of flow in all of those things you mentioned of the second chakra. And so what she explained to me was, because there was no flow, this house flooding was like this what was manifesting as there's no flow. Well, I'm going to give you a ton of flow.
Mm-hmm.
And so that house flooded, and we repaired the flood and did the remodel. And 3 months later decided to move. We're in the new house, 6 months, this house flooded.
Oh my goodness.
And the elements that were consistently lacking flow were still there in the relationship and in myself. And everything that you said of the second chakra was present. And the same person had said to me, your insurance company is going to probably send you to an energy healer because they're going to stop processing your claim on floods.
It's so
and it was so funny. And then it was like, once I had to clear out everything that was holding within me, well, I got divorced a year later. And there's been a lot of flow since, I'll put it that way. But I experienced something else 2 years ago. We're in Northern California. It has become the new normal where there's a lot of wildfires, and we are now 3 years in a row of October being wildfire season. And it's devastating and it's scary, and there's fires happening right now. But 2 years ago, my kids' summer camp burned down. And it was devastating. This was a camp that they've been going to since they were young. I went to the same camp, had a different location when I was growing up, but it's the same camp. So I have deep connection since I was, 12 years old. So when the camp burned down, it was just devastating. And it happened on a Monday. And by the end of the week, out of nowhere, I had really, really, really deep lower back pain. And because I'm aware and attuned, I realized my sense of safety and security is feeling really compromised right now. And once I named it, that's where this back pain came from. I mean, like, it was so painful, sorry to be graphic, like just the hinging forward to wipe after going to the bathroom was like excruciating pain. It was just that small hinging of forward. But I was really able to tune into my root chakra. My sense of safety and security was compromised. And once I was able to name that and sleep with some stones under my pillow and meditate on safety and security, the pain went away.
Isn't it so amazing? Because
it's powerful.
It's so powerful. So like, you have the physical body thing, but when we get to the level of like, our emotions are the vibration that we're emitting to create our reality, right?
Yes.
And so like I always say, we can't outthink our emotions. I know they're very tied, but when we're not in coherence, then our reality is where we'll see the problem. That's like, if we're not tuned in or clear or, understanding. That's why I believe energy mastery is so important, so that you can do what you did, tune into your own physical body and listen and hear and take the actual energetic steps to remove the obstacle within you, outside you. It'll all mirror each other.
So what do you do when you get resistance of someone who doesn't believe, who's very maybe cognitive or cerebral or scientifically based? Because what we're talking about as energy is an intangible. Mm-hmm. And yet, so how do you help break through the barrier? And I don't want to say convince anybody, because it's not about convincing, but help them maybe expand their consciousness or awareness into being open to an additional system from which to view maybe their physical manifestations of pain.
Well, first of all, I believe that resistance is always a sign that expansion is on the other side. So there's that. So if you're resisting something enough, then you
right. So just stop. Let that be the process.
That's the clear sign. But I mean, everything that I talk about is scientifically based. And in fact, Dr. Joseph Dispenza's most recent book, which was Becoming Supernatural, actually now has proof. Like, they did actual testing to prove the energy centers are real, to show when chakras are in energetically, when they're out, how they affect and manifest your reality around you. It is now down in scientific record that they are present. When I read that book, I was like, oh, Dr. Joe, I love you. Because it's
validated everything.
Validating everything. And it's interesting because even somebody that I recently had on my podcast, Heather Alice Shea, is like, now there is where 30 years ago, mindfulness was like thing people were like, oh, you are just crazy talking about mindfulness.
Oh, yeah.
What is this kind of stuff? Well, intuition is the new mindfulness, and bringing the intuition to, an actual scientific practice. It is proven that we are intuitive. It is actually now where you can do research. You can find research studies that have shown what happens. Like, she was sharing a test where, you're holding up flashcards, right? And you can't see, like, it's just a screen and it's all done in out of order. Nobody knows what's going to come up on the screen, but there's cards that have things that are like snakes and stuff like that. And their body is being measured. And almost all the time, the physical body will respond, not knowing what card is next, but knowing that it's going to be a scary image on the other side.
Wow.
Right? Because our physical body, we're already connected into energy before we actually see it manifest in physical reality in front of us.
I need to learn more about that because that just fascinates me.
It's the coolest.
It's so fascinating. And energy is so palpable. Right? And then I think once we really tune into it, like I said, I'll speak for myself. Once I really became, it sounds so cheesy to say, once I became aware, but once I tuned into my own awareness and gave it more space to exist and gave it more attention to pay attention to, it was like I couldn't turn it off.
Once you're awake, you can go back.
And in fact, my therapist had instructed me, I love this. He had instructed me to get a magic wand because he said, you've got really powerful energy and you need to make sure you're channeling it properly and being really intentional with what you're doing with your energy. Because I happen to be someone, I manifest really strongly. And he was like reminding me, you got to stay aligned because you don't want to manifest the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And it's powerful.
It's so true. And you talked about something, then you created space, right? Because it really is about creating space within your energy body to hold more things, to hold more greatness, to hold more abundance, to hold more relationships, loves, all that. And speaking of that, the book that I want to give your listeners for free, The Magical Business Method, actually has a wand on the cover. So how fun is that?
I love that. Talk a little bit about the magical business method.
So the magical business method is the research that I was doing in the body. It will break down every chakra for you, how the resistance shows up. So everything we were talking about is in this book.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So they'll have, like, if you want more in-depth understanding, it's not a very big book. It's made that way so that you can have a quick read, how it'll present different, like, scenarios with clients, my own life, just to give you real tangibles. Because if you're like, I don't know how this presents in my life, you're going to have those answers by reading the book.
And so your newest book, what are you working on right now? Can you share a little bit more?
I do. The third book was The Blind Leap, Ditch the 9 to 5 for the Business of Your Dreams. But the one I'm really excited about is the one that is building up inside me. Like a tattoo, you guys. I can't stop writing. Like, that is when you think about what you're here in this body to do. I'm here to write, to go certain distance, turn back, write a book for the person to come up the ladder with me. And so the next one will be the chakra codes. It will be all about the essence of the chakra, the shadows of the chakra, and leaning into the shadows, because the shadows we're so afraid of our shadows, but the shadows give us the information. They're the ones that are guiding us. Guys, your shadows, if you're not looking at the lower vibrational emotions, if you're like, I have to be happy all the time, I need to be positive, I need to be all these things for all these people. It's like what I say is shadows is just the lower frequency energies and emotions that you're not looking at or not being willing to look at. They're like teenagers in your house having a party. That's what's happening.
They can give us so much information, and we're often so afraid of it. So wouldn't it be awesome to get to shift how we perceive the shadow?
That's the book. It's to shift, because the shadow is just as important, if not more so, than the light. Because the light will always clear out the shadow, always, right? Light will always diffuse darkness. But if you're not willing to look at it, then you can never shine the light at it.
You know, one of the kind of fun ways I think about that is, you know, the movie Inside Out, I'm sure.
Oh my God. Yes.
So as a quick funny aside, when I met John, we actually met online, and it was Tinder. And one of the things that caught my attention about him was his credential. He had a PhD in educational psychology, but he was a consultant on Inside Out because he's an expert in emotions. And I'm like, that's really hot. But what I love about Inside Out is the assumption that joy always has to be in control. And there's actually, that movie is based on complete accuracy of the 5 universal emotions as the work of Paul Ekman. But, the assumption that joy always has to be at the control panel of our brain, and that if joy is not in charge, then something's wrong with us.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the heroine of Inside Out is sadness.
Yeah.
If it weren't for sadness, joy couldn't do her job.
Right. And even taking this into like, we're on a scale of like emotions here where like joy is something that is so beautiful and so incredible. But like, if you look at polarity, then we have to be willing to see our sadness to experience the joy at the level that it has the capacity to being experienced. And we're so afraid of these, what I call lower frequency emotions, but the guilt, the shame, the anger, all whatever it is, that we actually start to box in our emotions, and we live in much more of a neutral emotional state where we're not allowing the low lows, but we don't get to receive the high highs either.
Yeah. What I said in the beginning, how powerful language is. And one of the things I do with my clients is really work on how we're naming and labeling what emotions we're experiencing, because we're so quick to label them as good or bad, positive or negative. Mm-hmm. And as soon as we are entering into that negative or bad emotional space, we're in resistance and denial and judgment. And as soon as we're in what we're labeling as that positive or good emotional space, we're into clinging, and I want to hold on to that, and I'm going to grasp it there. So I like to give the language of, they're not good and they're not bad, they're all natural.
Yeah.
They're all natural emotions, are all part of the human experience. We prefer to reside in one over the other. I get that. I'm not going to, I get that. And if we can understand that they're both equally have the availability of being present without a judgment on ourselves, like what a gift.
Yeah, I say the same thing. There's no good or bad. It's information. Get curious. Get really curious. Because when it comes up, like as long as you're not attached to it as having, a charge, if you will, then, oh guys, when you get that level of curiosity as to where did this come from? Why am I feeling it? And you're not thinking that you shouldn't have it, or it is, bad for you. That's the stuff.
It is. And I even think the question why is a really tricky one, because why I think can put us into judgment pretty quickly, because sometimes there is no why, right? And that's the hard part. How can we accept it when there's no reason for it?
True. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, I see this with a lot of my clients, that the why keeps them really stuck.
Yes.
And the why puts it into judgment, because it's a feeling of like something must be wrong with me if I'm feeling this.
Yes.
And so to add on to your
for life, Jory, now, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. And so, to add on to that curiosity piece, part of the curiosity is to just have the deep radical acceptance.
Yes.
In fact, I lead women's retreats every year. And I'm just about to announce my women's retreat for 2020. And I really sat with, what are the themes that I want to be about? The ones I just did for this year was on self-compassion. Mm-hmm. And that was very obvious to me, like that was the theme. And it just came to me the other day that for 2020, the theme is radical acceptance. Because we have such a hard time sitting with what we don't like.
Yeah.
Right. And what you're saying, part of this radical acceptance is to invite the shadow in, to sit with what's hard, to sit with what's dark, to sit with what's scary, to sit with what's overwhelming, and say, hey, how are you doing? Welcome.
I love you. That's what you say. I love you. Just the way you are.
Yeah.
Like as
put out the welcome mat.
Yep. Yeah, because that's true love. That's true love.
Oh my gosh, Tamara, I want to hang out. We need to just energetically just be sprinkling our pixie dust and our magic and our light, and just bringing that openness to people, because they so need it. We all need it. It's not a they, it's a we. We all need this.
Yes. I'm a constant student. I will always be a constant student. And I mean, every single day I get the opportunity to sit.
It's your one small step each day to do something different.
One small step. That's it.
Oh, look at that full circle.
Yeah. It's just like one small step.
Tamara, how can people find you?
You can go to my website, which is tamaraarnold.ca, and message me through there, or you can just email me, Tamara Arnold. I'm a human. Like I said at the very beginning, I am no different than you guys. I just sit in my discomfort and I love my discomfort. My discomfort is my best friend.
I love that. And we'll have all the links in the show notes so people can just have those links to click right on. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I am in awe of your story.
Thank you.
Of having been on that journey to go from residing in a space that was hard and made you feel stuck in a variety of ways to finding your way to be open and receive different ways to live your life and live through whatever the challenges are. That to me is the ultimate journey forward, because we all have that possibility. We really do. And it's mindset that's going to keep us stuck.
Yeah.
And it's fear, and it's all those things. And you have a really beautiful journey. And so thank you for sharing it.
Thank you for having me. And like I was saying, I would love to hear back from anyone who reads the book and, wants to share part of their story with me, because that is the gift.
I love it. Well, thanks so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, whatever arises. The positive, the negative, the good, the bad. It's just all of it. It's just all here. So
yeah, it's all wonderful.
We welcome it all.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much.
To continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat. Visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.